So Doolittle is the story of Robert Downey Jr. as the, a little bit older Dr. Doolittle, who has to go off on an adventure with all his animal friends, voiced by celebrities, naturally. And the thing is, okay, I've never been that interested in Dr. Doolittle, but, this concept is kind of interesting. What if, Doolittle was kind of a little bit older, a little bit more of an aged guy who kind of shut himself off from the world and kind of distrusted humans to that degree and could only, connect with animals and try to reconnect with the human world on an adventure. That seems to have been the intent with this film, directed by Steve Gaghan, but it feels like, I looked at this film and I can't help but feel like there are huge chunks of this film just kind of chopped off laying on the editing room floor, because it just feels so inconsistent with the tone here. Okay, so Robert Downey Jr. plays Dr. Doolittle. We establish in a great opening animated sequence that, he had a loving wife, and, the Queen granted him this wonderful estate where he could care for all these animals. And then one day, while his wife was off on a journey, she ends up dying, and, Doolittle just shuts himself off from the rest of the world. But then, a character by the name of Tommy, played by Harry Collette, comes to his house to seek his help with a squirrel. Now, at the same time, also coming to the house at the same time, is a messenger for the Queen, who says that the Queen is ill and she needs your help. So Doolittle decides, well, I don't know why I should help the Queen. And then they remind him, look, the Queen gave you this estate, and she says as long as she's alive, then you can keep the estate. So if she dies, you got to move out. So the motivation of this journey is that he doesn't want to be, evicted and lose all his animal friends. Okay, fair enough. And then when he gets to the Queen, it essentially boils down to, look, she's got some rare disease. We've got to go find this rare MacGuffin of a fruit on this mysterious island that nobody's found. So adventure ahoy! Jump in the ship. We're gonna find out we're gonna find this mysterious MacGuffin that'll save the Queen. Okay, standard adventure type stuff, and there's a little bit of background action of nemesis, of a villain who despises Dr. Doolittle. He's played here by Michael Sheen, who plays Dr. Blair Mudfly, the enemy of Dr. Doolittle. And he's playing up a fairly standard villain here. He's literally got the mustache that he can twirl, and he overdoes everything. He wants to shoot down his ship and hinder his way at every turn. It's interesting that they make this film it's clearly supposed to be it's going to take place in the UK. It's going to have this this British and English angle to it, which is fine. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. did a fairly good English accent in the Sherlock Holmes movies. Here, it seems and it's hard to tell, I'm guessing he's trying to do maybe a Scottish accent. It's hard to tell because he seems to be mumbling half his lines, so it's hard to tell. I mean, and I say that because in between all this, he's actually doing animal sounds to talk to the animals. Now, I kind of like this barrier that he has where everyone else looks at him talking to animals. It just looks like he's making weird animal noises. But the thing is, they harp on this a little bit too much because Tommy wants to basically learn what Dr. Doolittle does and learns how to talk to animals. So essentially, he's making goofy animal sounds, and Doolittle is trying to educate him on how to speak to animals. I'm sorry, I didn't know that talking to animals was a learned skill, like a linguistic skill that you could pass down. So I guess that's a thing that happens in the film. Now, of course, there's a huge celebrity voice cast for this film. You have probably the most prominent voice as Emma Thompson, as kind of the motherly macaw who basically, kind of drives Doolittle and kind of pushes him around. You have John Cena playing a polar bear who is afraid of being cold, which is a funny concept, but really doesn't feel taken advantage of. I get the feeling there might have been more jokes for him, but they're not quite here. You have Kumail, who's playing a ostrich that isn't quite sure of himself and kind of despises the polar bear. They have a little bit of a friendship, but not a whole lot. And then you got a whole bunch of other voices here just voicing either either animals who associate with Doolittle or are villains. So like a perfect example of a villain is Ralph Fiennes plays a tiger by the name of Barry. Now, of course, Ralph Fiennes has like a great voice for a villain, and I appreciated him doing that voice. But of course, they established that he's a tiger and that he's a cat, and cats do like they established that he's a character who has a little bit of like psychological issues that he has to work through. Kind of funny, but the biggest problem with this film is that there's no real down moments to kind of like catch our breath and sort of take in the characters and get to know and like them, because this film has an absurd amount of characters and side characters added into it. Like at one point they make a stop on an island that's run by this king of the pirates played by Antonio Banderas, who he does a good job, but he's got nothing much to do here. Like he never has like a breakout moment. But come to think of it, nobody really has a breakout moment here. Michael Sheen is a little bit over the top. He doesn't really do much. Jim Broadbent is sort of this, conspiratorial lord of trying to assassinate the queen. Isn't that interesting? It just feels like he's kind of putting on the standard stuffy voice. Even on like a visual level of like a lot of like the animal hijinks and slapstick, I always kind of feel like, okay, I expect this scene, but nothing's really unexpected here or funny. It's just kind of like, oh, animals show up and humans are a little bit, like distracted and dismayed by them a little bit. What I found, it's weird because like nothing really hits here. And I think it's because we're missing all those moments that are supposed to be a little bit slower and let us know the characters just a little bit more, because this film runs about 102 minutes, and I can't help but feel like 20 minutes was chopped off from it, because it just rushes from place to place to place to place to place so quickly, and we rarely get an opportunity to sort of like feel the sadness that Doolittle has, or the affection that he feels towards his apprentice, or the other animals in his care, or to get to like know and love a lot of the animals more as characters than just, like celebrity cameos, and then just kind of funny stuff happens to them. Like, there needs to be more to this film than that, which is unfortunate, because like it feels like, I don't know, even if like those extra scenes, and I guarantee you there were extra scenes for this film, even if those extra scenes didn't really add much to it, I get the feeling like at least if they added something there, it would have seemed more cohesive, because this is a film that it gets absurd, but it doesn't get absurd enough, unfortunately. Like the whole climax of the film, and this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler, but I swear to you, the climax of this film is that Dr. Doolittle, in order to save the day and acquire the fruit he needs to save the queen, has to give a dragon a colonoscopy. So in other words, he has to go digging around in a dragon's butt for blockage. I'm not kidding. This is literally the big climax of the film. And yet, because it just goes for the easy fart joke and about, bones of other armies that the dragon has eaten being pulled out of the dragon, it never quite felt absurd enough. I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous, and maybe I should be feeling something for the fact that Doolittle is given a dragon a colonoscopy. But aside from just saying that on paper, there's nothing intrinsically interesting or even funny about that scene, really. Even on like a very, very lowbrow level, there's not a whole lot to it. And so, as a result, nothing from this film really breaks out. It just feels like a whole bunch of elements just smushed together and a whole bunch of like extra stuff trimmed out that doesn't make it a real cohesive film. Like the editing in this film is just chaotic. It jumps all over the places, and like we lose frame of references for characters. The shots feel very off at times, and there's rarely a moment where the adventure feels exciting, where it doesn't just feel like we're looking at Robert Downey Jr. just maneuvering his way around like CGI animals and fantastical settings. It always feels like the whole story is just not quite there, and it never quite feels like the acting is there either. Just by the way that Robert Downey Jr. just kind of like mumbles his way through this role, and the way that the characters are just kind of playing these very simplistic and expected cartoonish versions of themselves, it just adds nothing. And as a result, you've kind of got this kind of lukewarm, mediocre adventure that never really impresses and just feels all over the place. And I felt nothing while watching this film. Absolutely nothing. So what more can I say? I mean, the trailer looked like a mess, but I'm saying, okay, trailers can be misleading. They can, they cannot tell the whole story sometimes. It's about as messy as the trailer looks. It's chopped up. It's all over the place. We really get to know or like the characters that much. We don't even get to appreciate the thrill of a dragon assaulting an army, or animals just running amok, or hunting for treasure, or trying to escape from a jail, or trying to escape the clutches of a tiger that wants to eat Doolittle. None of it feels really thrilling or funny or anything. It just feels so passive that I felt about as checked out as Robert Downey Jr. in this film. So, for Doolittle, 1.5 out of 5 stars. Not good.